now we're going to get into a panel discussion. It's about technology again, and then we're going to get into innovation after this. But now we're going to talk about transforming financial services with the power of analytics. And the panelists are Frank Pinto, an ICT consultant. Frank, if you could please take your seat here. And Frank will be the moderator. And Michael Haddad again, please join us. Berdine, Viljoen, jeez, I messed up them. From Sasfin, Berdine. And Nadir, Khamissa from Hello Group. And Stephen Ambrose, tech editor, Business Brief magazine. All right, I think we can get started, and when Stephen gets here, he can join us. Frank, please take it.
Okay, well, good afternoon, and thank you. Originally, I was supposed to be just a member of the panel, but I see that we have somebody missing in action. So apologies if I lose track of which hat I'm actually wearing as moderator and perhaps even panelist. So Michael, thank you very much. I think that was a great presentation that really segues into this discussion, this panel discussion. And I think that what we need to do is just get a bit of context as well for the discussion. Just as a matter of interest, has anybody dealt with the FSB recently? Anybody?
Financial Services Board.
The Financial Services Board. So if you look at the Financial Services Board and you look at their publication, which they have in the Government Gazette every so often because they keep on changing things, their definition of what constitutes a financial service that needs to be registered is almost 7 pages long. So if you look at those various categories, there are 4 different categories and a whole lot of different items of what constitutes in this country legally a financial service that needs to be licensed and registered and regulated through the FSB runs to almost 7 pages. And that just gives us some context as well in terms of the discussion, which is we're not just talking necessarily about banking and insurance. I certainly have had a decade in banking, a decade in insurance, and then a decade in retail. And if you think about it, some of the big financial services are actually in furniture companies, in clothing companies, etc. So if we can extend our discussion to maybe a broader context in terms of what we see as a financial service, and certainly some of the things that you're doing, Nadir, I know also fall outside of just typical banking and insurance, I think that will just enrich the context. Is that good?
Perfect.
Fantastic. So what I suggest we do, we don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to go just around, and if you could please just introduce yourself and answer the first question to get us going, which is, do you really think that the C-suite understands what big data and analytics is and what it could potentially do for their business? Michael, do you mind if we start with you?
Okay. So, as you know, I'm Michael Haddad, and I'm mainly a business analytics consultant and practitioner. And to get back to the answer, to the question, I think it's like all generalizations. They're great generalizations. They're great things to make, just like all CEOs are legacy. It's a great generalization, and it's true and it's not true. It's true in 20% or 80% of the case. So it's the same. It's the true in 80% or in 20%. I'm not sure. It's somewhere between that figure. So in my experiences, you come across it's very difficult for the executives to understand what's going on for legacy companies that have not started off their life understanding what data is. And for many of those financial directors, for the CEOs, they've come to their current position, seeing data as something that is holding their transactions, holding their documents, and they have to secure that for legal reasons and for a bit of analytic reasons. But generally, it's just for operational reasons. It's not for analytic reasons. We have to know always what our transactions are. That's a given. And now that's the boring part of IT. I mean, storing transactions, anybody can do that. You can get open source software that does it. You're still not done. And anybody can do it. But to actually then add value to that with analytics, I would say a small percentage of executives are understanding that.
Thank you, Michael. Berdine?
Thanks. Well, I don't know. Am I on? Okay, I'm Berdine Viljoen. I'm the CIO of Sasfin Bank. Okay, so we've been a little bit hard on the C-suite today, to be honest. I would honestly believe that they do know. Okay, there's a lot of talk though, and in the end, it's all over the news. It's one of those buzzwords, isn't it? Like we're talking about digital as well, digitalization, and it's so funky. Just think about it. 10, 15 years ago, e-business, is that different? I actually don't think so. So from a data perspective, definitely the C-suite is quite aware of it. I think it's more relevant from a practical perspective, and also there's let's be a little bit hard on the consultants here. You know, it's very easy to come in and criticizing these guys that daily lives with it. I mean, you often get people that just come in and tell you how easy it is and why aren't you doing it, and it's such a brilliant thing, and it is. And I think most corporates, not every corporate today, know in order to survive, you have to be able to know and understand your data. You have to be able to know and understand your processes. You know that you can only be competitive by really getting your hands on it. If you open any integrated report today, you'll see that it's there. So I don't think any of us can argue that people are aware of it. Do they truly understand it? Honestly, do you truly think that these guys that run multi-million companies don't get it? You know, they get it. It's just the practicalities around it.
Thank you, Berdine. Nadir?
Hi, everyone. I think I'm a bit of an outlier in this room, given that I'm not from a big telco and I'm not from a bank and I'm not a consultant. I'm an entrepreneur, and we founded a company called the Hello Group, which deeply believes that the solution to the vast majority of the problems faced by people at the base of the pyramid are going to be solved by technology, right? And I'm probably going to sound like a salesman for Hitachi. I swear I'm not, and I've no interest in the business, but I agree with every single word that Michael said. We run a customer-centric business that lives on data, okay? We eat, sleep, and everything else on data. And in a matter of 10 years, because of the fact that we're a young company, we are exceptionally tech-focused, we're driven by data, we've built businesses that has been massively disruptive in the telecom industry in South Africa, where we have 1.5 million consumers, in the distribution industry, where we've got 45,000 spaza shops selling our products, and now we're doing it in financial services. So we've been voted Innovator of the Year by Sanlam Business Partners for this year, and Entrepreneur of the Year by Sanlam Business Partners this year in South Africa. And the reason I believe we've been so successful is because the big companies have, I agree with you that the big C-suite executives in these huge corporates are aware of big data. I believe that they want to deliver it, but they're also hamstrung by their legacy systems that are silo-based. They've got an organizational structure that's, again, silo-based. And I'm actually afraid that Hitachi is going to sell these systems to these people, and I'm not going to be able to run circles around these big companies anymore. So that's my view.
Thank you, Nadir. Now, Berdine, I just want to touch on a point that you raised, which is, consultants come in and say, wow, it's easy, et cetera, yet we know that there are challenges. I mean, the old adage from the very beginning, when I started my career 35 years ago, was garbage in, garbage out. So can we just discuss, I mean, we've already heard about the silos as being a challenge. What are some of these challenges to actually cutting through the hype and the buzz down to, this is the reality of implementation. There be dragons there. What are some of the things that we really have to watch out for?
Okay, if I may, I think one of the first and most important things, and you've touched on it, is really a cultural aspect. It's to do with the maturity of the organization and its people in general. I think the other thing that is, yes, it has a lot to do with leadership. It has to do with the fact that I mentioned earlier, making a comment out of the audience, basically, is the same thing with digital data innovation. It cannot be transferred to an individual or a specific person or one leader in the organization. I think it's very much to do with a complete change in the view of, first of all, the vision of the organization, a visionary thing. If it becomes an essential part of the culture, it will become easy. You know, so some of us is in a better position than others if you don't have those very kind of hardcore legacy problems, but that is also reality. But of course, in the end, doesn't matter how good systems you put in place, doesn't matter the advanced processes, the advanced analytics that you might put in place. If you haven't changed every individual's view of the data and the analytics and the value of it, then basically the organization will be wasting their money.
Any other thoughts?
Well, I must say I disagree with you about like these people who are running these businesses. I mean, I don't know whether it's true, but Warren Buffett is supposed to have said, I only invest in businesses that a fool can run it, because one day a fool will run it. And I think it's a lot of, you find a lot of that in pieces that people have got. You don't only find it in businesses, you find it in countries. People get to their positions for unknown reasons, for legacy reasons, and they're not necessarily the best people to run those businesses. And you do get, I mean, you get organizations where they are sitting on piles of information, and you say to them, you can get information that people, they do not see it. Many, this is generalization, eh? It's not, doesn't apply to everybody, but there are many large corporations where they do not see the value of what they've got. We've got one client who've got millions of records of patients. Millions and millions and millions of patient records. They can't see any value in using that data. Even anonymizing it and using it, they don't see a value in doing that. It's a very interesting, it's an old-fashioned business. And it's run by old-fashioned people with legacy ideas. And the legacy issue, it's not just around analytics. I mean, in almost any system you try and put in, you put in a document management system. If the client says to you, we're going to import all our old documents, then you know this project is a failure. It's going to be a failure. You cannot import. No one's interested in the old stuff for just to put it into that. And I think the legacy issue is a big problem.
Just to add to that, I remember sitting with the CEO of one of the companies at one time, and he said to me, Frank, you've given us a phenomenal tool. The challenge that I have is that my people still think the way they used to in terms of reports. They do not know what questions to ask in order to be able to properly leverage what the tool can actually do, and I don't think that they actually understand what the tool can do. So if I can add to that, because we talk about legacy, but we are creating an equally large problem today in that in many instances IT is not reactive enough to business, and because of the modern technologies, business is using their own money and their own budgets to go out there and completely bypass IT because they think they can do it quicker. How is that affecting the ability to actually, Nadir, perhaps, you're saying you're scared that these guys will get Michael in to come and help him. Do you think that it's that easy, given the challenges that some of these corporates have got, well, not only with legacy, but the fragmentation of IT within many corporate environments?
Look, I made that comment in jest a little bit because I think the system is just incredible, and I think it will create a lot of value for these corporates. In terms of how well they arranged internally and how well prepared their culture is to accept the argument that they don't know best and they should buy a system that is best in class, I really can't comment. I mean, from our perspective as a highly entrepreneurial organization, we love bringing in smarter brains than we have, but I guess we're a young company, so we easily embrace that. Whereas I can't really comment for the bigger corporates.
Berdine, from your perspective,
I don't think that in in an organization in itself that the last thing that you should do is actually bring in the system. I mean, somebody mentioned earlier in terms of, first of all, you have to distinguish between CIOs and traditional IT managers, even though they might have the CIO title. So if I just might state that. Secondly, if you look at CIOs and truly bringing technology, my most important function currently is strategic. I mean, I honestly, if you look at the integrated report that's going to come out from Sasfin, you'll see how the IT theme just comes through right from the beginning, right to the end. And thirdly, your biggest and most important delivery that I do on a day-to-day basis is actually organizational development. So my focus is very much on organizational development. As a matter of fact, I'm always at the back, and they always consult with me when on the change management front in itself. So even before you start touching the technology, it sounds strange for IT person to say, don't even go technology. You have to have those. I can't iterate it enough. You have to have that correctly, because you're never going to get the data perfect. Never is a long time, but you get what I'm saying. So if you wait for that, you're also never going to buy the technology. For me, I would buy a technology or implement or do a major project and consult with the big brains around me in order to do the best thing that I can for the bank as soon as I'm sure that people get it. As soon as I'm sure that they actually can, like what you mentioned, where the numbers jump at you. I've got a few sexy guys over there with me as well, the statisticians. They honestly, they freak you out because they look at the screen, it's like something jumps at them.
Exactly.
Now just think how powerful it would be if you can train your mid and management up in order to see that themselves. If every executive, line manager, middle manager can actually see that, but not only in the high now analytical data analysis and all the best tools, but even if they can just see that in their normal management reports.
Yes.
So before my business can actually see it in their management reports and their operation reports, do we truly expect them to start looking at their data, these mass amount of information, and it jumps at them?
Yeah, but I must say, I think, if I could jump in here,
Sure.
we do business with pretty much all the big banks. We do a lot of business with Sasfin, and I really believe that, the way you're running this, setting up the culture of this organization is quite unique amongst the big banks.
Thank you.
So I think your philosophy is not really shared with many of the other big banks. I don't know what your experience has been,
absolutely.
but that's certainly mine. So I think you guys are doing a great job.
Thank
I
you.
was just wondering if you've got sexy in your recruitment as a attribute.
Yes, absolutely. We only appoint on sexy brains. Looks as well.
I actually found that only after we deployed the tool were we able to actually determine the data hygiene that we had in place, which was quite interesting.
Honestly, you
It was
do
actually
see
quite
that,
interesting.
Yeah.
So, obviously, when you look at, Michael, what you were talking about, blending data. So now, blending data, in essence, we're starting to look at a far, far larger source of data. And we know that what's on the internet, once it's out there, it stays. And we've already seen that many governments have got onto the bandwagon of things like data security, etc. Google's been embroiled in stuff. Microsoft's been embroiled. And I see Apple as well. We so often in terms of what data is being collected and data security concerns. Now, if we're going to start mining that type of data, blending it with what's in corporate, then bringing out external sources, how's this all starting to come together? And what are the concerns that citizens should be having in terms of the security of the data that we can now so easily with these types of tools have access to?
Yeah, it's a very interesting and personal question. And people have such different reactions to it. Like, my wife says, I'm so boring. Why is anyone interested in my data? I don't care if they know everything about me. What is it that they... Why am I'm not protective of my...
I'm not that special.
I'm not protective of my information about me. I'm just a normal middle-class person living my life. And then other friends of mine will say, I hate the idea that anybody knows anything about me. And is freaked out when she does a Google search and it gives her different results to me. It's remarkable. She can't bear that idea. So I think it's something that will balance out over time. I mean, I think society will come to a agreement, a social agreement at some point about what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. And I think anonymizing data will become more and more important, like medical records. There's no ways anyone is talking about publishing medical records with people's names on it, but to publish medical information that says in this part of the country, this is the prevalent diseases. That's useful social information. And as an individual, we don't have a right, I don't think we have a right to restrict our information from being part of a whole that is adding to society's knowledge. So I think it's a balancing act. And it's a bit like, people say about buy insurance as a grudge buy. We buy security on our data. We spend money on security on data as a grudge spend. We don't want to secure our data. No one wakes up and says, I want to secure my data. But you just have to.
Now, Sasfin, obviously, from a regulation perspective and from a governance perspective, I mean, you guys have got some very sensitive data. I mean, credit card data, for example.
Yes.
I mean, if we know, what are your biggest challenges there in terms of being able to reconcile the needs for security and yet the power of being able to use that data for some seriously sexy, as you term it, business benefit?
Well, first of all, I mean, luckily, because of all the very smart technologies out there, the first thing is to really know what you've got. I mean, if you start with that, and that's the one thing that Sasfin's got to. We really started early with that. So in terms of technologies that we've put in place, we know where our confidential and private information is in the unstructured environment. Structured is a little bit easier, or it should be easier. You know where it is, it's labeled correctly, it's meta-tagged, all of that. So that, first of all, we've already started quite a while back. I can tell you exactly where is the credit card information. I can tell you who's got access to that.
So please tell us. We want to know.
I can give you a few credit cards. No, we're fired for that. But yeah, so we can really tell that. So the second step that we've started also a while back, and that's speaking about the culture in itself, is where you give that responsibility and transparency back to the line of business. So you don't make it only IT's responsibility. You don't make it only risk or governance or security's responsibility and so forth. So I also get asked by the board every quarter. They ask me, what keeps you awake at night? And I say nothing. Luckily, I sleep quite well. So first of all, I've got an absolute brilliant team. And secondly, it doesn't have to worry about something that you don't know. So the only time I really get stressed out is if I don't know what's going on in the environment. And today, there's no reason for you not to know what's going on in your environment, because you know what is out there. And then you know what is entering and exiting your environment. You know who's got it. You know what they're doing with it. You know, should you need know. And you also transfer that responsibility and give that transparency back to the business. I just want to add to what you mentioned in terms of, and you're absolutely right when you say that often people don't see what they can do until you've started to show them something. Now, isn't it lovely when you start looking at true agility and how you can, if you bring in that type of culture in your organization, and we started to work in that way already 2 years ago without labeling it as such, with my development teams and so forth, then that becomes one of those kind of light bulb situations for the business, because they go, the best thing I love in my job is if business gets up and they go, Berdine, let's do that. And you know you've been working on them in order to do that, and you can turn around and you say, what a brilliant idea, you know? And then you know they own it, you know? Yeah. And then it doesn't matter to me if somebody says, well, IT didn't come up with it, whereas you have. So yes, those kind of smaller initiatives, agility concepts, and it's hard for banks, but you know.
But I also think
it proves quite a bit.
Modern applications should be selling themselves. I mean, I was very skeptical in the 90s where they had all this investment in voter education. I thought, people want to vote. They all know how to vote. I mean, it's
We'll figure it out.
why do we need so much money spent on vote education? How much effort was spent on SMS education? Nothing. People wanted to SMS. They SMSed. How much money was spent on introducing emails to men? People wanted to emails. If people want to do it, and if people see the value in it, they will easily adopt those things. And so, in many cases, if we have to bring in change management and things like it, often indicates that we have failed to implement correctly, or we have put in a product that's not actually aligned with what people are wanting to do.
Question. Regarding analytics and banking, financial technology, I have a question around who more or less orchestrates the change. Does it always have to come from the C-suite, or people down the, I don't know, for want of a better phrase or word, like people down the order with understanding can also be the ones who start the change process? Because more often than not, for example, when it comes to data, there's an assumption that people at the C-suite are the ones who have to understand the numbers, the figures, how it's impacting the bottom line. And because of that, we don't give a lot of room for the people who do the operational stuff, the RMs, the back office stuff, to really understand the impact of their input and output on the organization. So how do you balance out the change-making process? Who starts it? Should it always come from the big board, the boss saying that we need to get data analytics, or people down the line should be able to say that, boss, this is what I need for me to become more productive to you? Should we allow analytics to be part of the everyday thing? Through dashboards, people having accessibility and understanding the business, value of whatever they are doing, around the work chain.
Okay, thank you for that. This is where I'm going to swap hats, if I may, because I probably have had more access to more corporates in this country than perhaps many. And what I found is it depends. It depends on the culture that Berdine has been talking about. It depends on how that company works. But in many, many instances, the answer is who is holding the purse strings, because somebody has got to pay for that. Right. And if you look at the examples that we've seen repeated again and again and again of those innovative companies, the Amazons, the Googles, etc., what do they all have in common? They have
a visionary CEO.
Visionary right at the top who has clout. And that's usually what happens, because you get a lot of clever people down the bottom. If you do not have a culture that encourages that to filter up, then it's going to be the guy who holds the purse strings. And if that person is not visionary, guess what? Ain't going nowhere. And that's why, having Nadir on the panel is quite interesting, because as an entrepreneur, you were saying, does that answer that? Anybody else want to add? Sorry.
No, I think
I'm losing my
I agree with you.
Other hat now, moderator hat. Nadir, in your business, I was quite curious to hear that you're saying that without data, your business just does not exist. Yeah. So with that sort of experience, do you think it is the silver bullet that is going to get us to the point where the buzz, the hype around we can actually personalize services to you and you alone? Do you think that we're on the road there, that it's even possible?
I think we are. I don't believe that there is a single silver bullet. The world is too complex, and this industry is way too complex to have a single solution to all of the problems. However, without data analytics and without a layer that aggregates the multiple sources of data to get a single view of your customer, I think by definition, the bigger the organization grows, the more dysfunctional it looks towards its customers. Yeah. And that's why I believe it's fundamental. But having said that, in addition, especially, I'm a tech guy, and the way technology is moving and the way the world is moving, I believe that financial services is going to be changed dramatically. And I believe that there are a lot of problems that people have with financial services that can be solved using technology. And the data analytics, to me, it gives you a lens that sort of decodes the problem customers have. So it's a critical element, but it's not the only element.
Because I look at Tony saying, you know what, I've been with you for 28 years. It's the 21st century. And not, we're quite deep into the 21st century, second decade already. And you're still sending me stuff that is not appropriate to me from, I guess, is one of the top 4 in the country. And we know what those budgets look like. I certainly do. They're eye-watering. And you could buy a small country for the types of IT budgets that these guys have got, some of them. Yeah. What is in our way? What's keeping us back here?
I think it's a mixture of so many things. There's not just one thing. It's the same as there's not one silver bullet. It's like there is skill. I think there's a big shortage of skill, and there's a big historical lump of people sitting running IT departments and companies who don't understand and don't see the future. I mean, we saw yesterday in Joburg, the EFF, they don't see the future. They want the mines. The mines are last century's business. You don't want the mines. Who wants the mines? No one wants the mines. I mean,
the EFF wants it.
Yeah, but I mean, you've just said so. They're on the wrong path. They want your business.
They want everything
they
for
want
free.
Your business, not the mines.
I want it now, and I want it for Mahalo.
Give them ideas, though.
I mean, so it's that same sort of thing. People are not seeing what the future is going to give us, and we need, and I think that's going to just take decades to change. And when the people who are now have grown up not knowing a world without Google, not knowing a world without the internet, not knowing all of those things, when they are running those IT departments, which unfortunately for us in sort of the third world, the people in many parts of the first world have been doing that for 10 years longer than us, but still, we've still got the chance. In South Africa, by education, there's a big problem, but when those people do get into those positions, I think things will slowly will change. But it's not going to be changed by people of my generation, I don't think.
I'd like to add a little bit on this because, I mean, in terms of the problem, I think I'm not qualified to diagnose the problem, but I think I'm qualified to diagnose what I believe the solution is, right? And we've seen this because I've been in the telecom business for 10 years and we're pretty new in fintech. We've just launched 8 months ago and it's doing pretty well, but in the telco industry for the first 10 years, we had the big telcos in South Africa making lots of money and trying to lock everybody else out of the industry. And that has resulted in the death of innovation within these organizations. They're still selling minutes, and now all they're doing is they're selling minutes and megabytes. And there's tremendous innovation happening in the tech space. I mean, we do amazing things, and we partnered with Cell C, which has been fantastic for them. But the other networks have not, right? And I'm seeing, as we're entering the fintech space, we're seeing the same thing with the banks. I mean, there are a few of the smaller banks, Sasfin included. We're working on a whole bunch of very, very exciting innovations, exciting ventures, and the big banks are trying to lock the small guys out. And I think part of the solution would be partnerships, potential acquisitions, and if you can't beat them, join them, right? And that's something that at Hello we are working very hard with banks across Africa in various JV and partnership capacities to help bring our technologies and our business models into these big banks. And I hope that will help them and us, obviously.
So do you think it's just poor execution?
I think you have to look at organizational design, which is an essential element. So if you look at some of the bigger organizations, and it's always this debate of centralization, decentralization concepts. I think what quite often happens is we spend a lot of time in meetings, luckily not me, but a lot of, because you can do the same thing in 50,000 different ways. So there's a lot of arguments that happens on the IT side. And then what happens as well, and if you really go into the theory around digital mastery and things like that, which is business intelligence, it's data, it's all the things that we know, best of breed technologies, visionary leaders, all of that. Everything that you see from there is is that everybody moves to one direction. So it's not creating all of these little technologies all over the place, little teams running off in different directions, and then spending weeks in a boardroom hitting one another until they bleed because mine is bigger than yours, kind of thing, you know. So I think one of the things that is very, very hard for these big organizations is, if you look at Jack Welch and what he did. I mean, he initially came in, and what did he do? He fired all of the top execs, you know, and he restructured completely. Maybe it's what we're kind of facing in order to really optimize the technologies and the latest trends today. Because we will have to do things in a different way.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so in the 5 minutes, there are two things I'd like to do. The one is, you talked about data scientists, and I would like to add to that and say, what about social psychologists? Because ultimately what we're doing is actually more and more moving out of IT into the realm of social psychology. What are your thoughts around that? And then if we can wrap up with, so what do you think is, or what do you see as the future that predictive analytics has, or the future impact that predictive analytics could have on the financial services industry? So in wrapping up, because we only have 5 minutes, if we could just deal with those two, and any other questions from the audience, then we'll just take it from there. Okay? Do you mind if I just go?
Sure.
Well, who wants to go first? Let's leave it at that.
Okay, I'll start. So, I mean, one of our things, our failures, and one of our problems in South Africa is terrible education. And so we end up with innumerate people. I mean, not illiterate. People laugh. Oh, I'm innumerate. Ha, ha, ha. It's like a social, it's like it's advantage. I mean, no one laughs by saying, oh, I'm illiterate, ha, ha, ha. But people think people are innumerate. I mean, one of my favorite things is looking through the newspaper, and in every newspaper I'll find a journalist who's made a numeracy mistake. So I think that's a problem for us bringing social scientists in. We love librarians, for example. And I think you can convert a librarian into a data scientist more easily than you can convert a computer programmer into a data scientist. You can they understand.
How about complementing each other?
They complement each other, you see, but you need that thing. So I think we need that understanding, because you can't just look at the numbers and see society. You have to understand society and then look at the numbers. So you have to have that. You can't take a person from the moon or from Mars and make them a data scientist. They must understand. So social scientists, if they can grasp that, but that's one of our problems in South Africa in particular, is our numeracy, and people are scared of it even if they are capable of it. But I think that's what we try and move towards in terms of training data scientists.
Excellent. Any closing comments then on the future of predictive analytics on financial services?
Sure.
Just one sentence. Two.
I think, I think that if the bigger organizations, the bigger banks can get rid of their legacy issues and silo them and say, okay, this is a legacy business, let's start a new business, then they might take you on. But hopefully for you, they don't do that.
Thank you, Michael. That's awesome. Berdine.
Sure. I think first of all, it's very difficult to honestly answer. We know that predictive analytics definitely is the future. I think one of the most difficult things that I sometimes struggle with is everybody is the IT expert, I mean, you stand around a fireplace and, just everybody knows better, and everybody's got advice, and they'll tell you exactly where and I can use a very crude word, it up, Yeah. So it is honestly, I think we all should continue. Humbleness in terms of leadership becomes absolutely essential. Everybody should take accountability. That's what I would say. Okay. So, but stick to what your area of expertise is. So, from a business perspective, I would say take responsibility for your data. Take responsibility for understanding your information and understanding your existing systems. Don't make it IT's problem, because then you would never be able to use it to its full extent that it should be. I mean, so these days, our biggest enemy, I would say, from any organization is the silos between functional areas. rather than anything else. The technologies are there. The information is there. We've got all the smart people out there, but it's like we don't want to get together and work together to find the best, you know. And if we can get away from as any organization, from that kind of blame, protecting your kind of domain, but not recognizing that other individuals can provide valuable input in creating something great, I think you'll take the financial market if you get that right. Excellent. But it takes absolute visionary leadership, and not one person. It takes that complete team. Yes. And honestly, I think Sasfin's got that. If I can just
good for you. I look forward to your success. Nadir, closing comments.
On predictive analytics, I mean, I believe it's brilliant. It's amazing. I'm just not convinced. At least in South Africa, we are ready for it. I mean, even us with our startup, relatively new technology, we still just trying to get using big data analytics to get a single view of our customers, to understand them, and to create value and solve problems for them today, not even tomorrow, right? So the time will come, but at least for our organization and many of the other organizations we deal with, I don't believe the time is now.
Okay. So, team, thank you. I think it was an awesome effort. I think that we had, we really brought to the fore some key points. And in closing, my comments are, every day, more and more data is being created. Yes. Those that recognize what data is important and can actively derive business business benefit from it, are the winners of tomorrow. So thank you. Any questions?
Thank you.
Otherwise, thank you, panel. You've done a great job.
You.
Thanks, Steve.
I think that I'm a big fan of big data. The social anthropologist actually is what you're referring to is a critical part of data analysis. And the reason for that is I've been in situations of social data specifically where you're staring at a large data set and you can see a pattern. Don't even need a microphone. You can see a pattern, but you need to actually ask people what's motivating that pattern. Once you understand that, then you can go back to your data and you can model things. But the social anthropologist part of it is actually critical. And there were lots of questions that I've always had we made assumptions on. And until we actually had someone in the field go out there and actually interview people, we actually were just doing best guess. So I think that's a critical layer which you actually need to overlay with your data.
Brilliant. So it's not just data science.
No, I think that actually the next sexy job is social anthropologist.
Well, social anthropologist turned into a data scientist.
Thank you for that. Thank you very much. Thank you.